Fishing hard pellets across the islands is one of the best tactics, especially in the spring and summer. I'm going to show you a simple little rig, simple tactics and simple feeding methods to help you catch loads of nice fish like this on a simple method, but one that is very effective. Welcome back to the channel everyone, and we've got a great little video here for you today, and it's all about hard pellet fishing on these sort of venues. This is a snake lake, this is Barbie Banks, a fishery that I absolutely love. I did loads of live matches here last year and I felt I learned an awful lot, and the fishing is really simple. Most of my success came just using 4mm pellets for actually getting the feeding right, and timings and how much to feed, how often to feed, whether to pick this up and fight my inner feeding demons. All little questions that you've got to answer throughout the session. And I'm just going to show you a few little feeding tips that will hopefully improve your catches on the old hard pellets. Now, just to touch on the bait, I've just got some 4mm screttings. I've also got some 6mm coppens. I'll always start on the 4s because I feel like there's a bit more attraction. I think you can feed a few more pellets and it can pull a lot of fish in, especially when you're fishing for these fish which are like 1 to 5 pound. However, if I'm getting too many liners, I'm getting missed bites, catching bigger fish, then sometimes 6mm can be better. And I did a lot with the 4s last summer, but at the back end I was using 6s and getting an even better result. So I like to carry both and just work out on the day what they prefer. I've always got a 6mm in the band though, and when I get fishing I'll explain why, but I like to have a bit of weight in the pellet because I'm dealing with slopes here today, and it just gives me a bit of something to hang on to and register on the float, almost like a mini plummet. Now the rig is simplicity really, but all done for a reason. Now it's not quite 3 foot, but it's certainly 2.5 foot across there, and it's one of the shallower pegs on this venue. Normally they're 3, even 3.5 foot, but the rig would be the same. I've got white zip, which is a lovely elastic for this type of fish. I've got my trusty pole pot close to the tip. I can't stress how important that is. Have it as close as you can comfortably fish without getting tangles. So for me, these pots just fit about 2 inches back, which is about perfect for me. I've got this on 020. Now interestingly, I'm using a new line for me. I'm using the Guru Supernatural. I think I said on my line video that I was looking forward to trying it, and I actually went and bought one of each size the other week. And I really like it. It's a nice line. It's a bit of me, that line. So obviously early days, this is my first session with it, but I really like it. It's a stretchy line, which I like. We've got a short line because I'm dealing with slopes. I need to be quite accurate. So I've just got about 10 inches there with a number 8 stop above the float, halfway between as a back shot. And then I've got this lovely little new float from us. This is a Diablo. It's a 0.3 and it's got a 2mm bristle and a little fiberglass stem. Now I always used to use sippies for this, and to tell you the truth, I used to pull the bristle off and put my own bristles on and all sorts. I was trying to come up with a prototype float that we could do coming forward, and in the end we've done this as like our island float. So whether you're fishing mudline, which I'll show in a different video, or with the heavier 0.4 and 0.5, or like I'm doing now fishing with a strung rig, this 0.3 diamond shaped Diablo is an absolute winner. Now I've got that plumbed up to the bottom of the body, and it's a super tough float. It's strong, it's just brilliant. Just a great little float for this style of fishing. And we've got that, like I say, plumbed up to the bottom of the body. But here is where the real important stuff is. So I think it's important to say I use a 6-inch hook length, not a 4-inch. Now I'm dealing with a slope, and with hard pellets I've got a bit of weight down the bottom, so I'm not obsessed with getting this last shot super close to the hook like I would be for expander pellet fishing, where you've got no weight to register. I've got weight on my hook bait, so I would rather have a nice bit of fall at the bottom of my rig that might catch an odd fish on the drop, rather than bombing it down to the bottom, if that makes sense. That's for a different bait, and in my opinion hard pellets are at the best when the bait is coming through the water. So all my setup is geared towards that. So I've got a 6-inch hook length, that's 0.12. I'd up to 0.14, but 0.12 is perfect at this place at the moment. Combined with that white zip, I'm never going to get broke. This is the important bit though, the shot. So I've got number 10s and then number 9s. I like to have 5 shot on my rig, if that makes sense. I could shot this entirely with number 10s, but it'd get a bit messy. I'd have 10s going right up to my float. I don't like that. I like to have 5 on there. So if I was using the 0.4, I'd use 9s at the bottom and then 8s. So I get to that 5 shot part. And that just works for me. So at the bottom end, I've got 2 number 10s and then I've got 3 number 9s. And they're all spread. And that is just perfect. I'm using Stotts because I've got an 020 mainline, and I just think that that is the perfect little rig. To talk about the swim, it is like a flat bank and then it goes into a little bay and then back out again. And I'm fishing on that little nib, if you like. Say, imagine that's the far bank here. I'm fishing on this little nib where the bank goes away. So I'm intercepting them, if you like. And what's happening is, from right to left as you look at my swim, the swim's going off like that. And what I'm doing, I'm using this light float and this strung out rig to come in onto the shelf, and maybe it's laid a little bit down the shelf, but I don't mind that so much. And just laying it against the shelf and I'm getting the bites really quickly. And then it's all about working out the feeding pattern to get the clean bites. So without further ado, let's get spun round, do a bit of fishing, and we'll talk about the feeding, because that is the most important part to this hard pellet fishing, because it's a simple bait, but there's loads of little nuances that can help you catch loads more fish. Right, so let's get some fishing done. I'm going to kick off with a 6mm in the band, and then I've got that rig with that delicate shotting pattern. And I've got my most important thing, I've got my pole pot right near the pole tip. Just far enough away so I don't get any tangles, but close so that I'm delivering those pellets right where I need them. Now, one little trick I always do, whether I put the pellets in and then dunk them in the water, or I've got this little bowl here with some water in, I can just dunk my hard pellets. But either way, I like to wet them before I go out. Just helps them break that surface tension. So just get a quick dunk in there, or do them in the water and dribble the water out, or have some holes in your pot and let the water fall through. Whichever way you want to do it, make sure they're a little bit damp so that we can get through that surface film. And what we've done, we've picked a spot against the far bank, and I think this is probably quite typical. I think this is probably quite typical of commercials these days, where you really struggle to find any shallow water across. Like, this is one of the shallower swims and it's still probably two and a bit foot over there. And I'm just going to accurately, to start with, I'm just going to put my bait in first, and then what I do, I like to flick my rig out to the side and then lay it in so it's coming in. Now it's perfect here because the bank goes, the bank goes away from me, so I've got something, because the bank's a bit like that and goes into this bay, I've got a little point to fish against, so I can actually lay my float up against that slope, so it's absolutely perfect. It is like the perfect swim for how I'm fishing today, with this like strung out shotted rig and like laying it into the slope, which I do a lot of that kind of fishing, and I think it's really effective. And that first fish obviously shows that why I like that strung out rig, because that fish took it on the drop. Now if I had a bulk on there, like a bulk down rig, I wouldn't see that. I wouldn't have caught that fish as quickly as that. So I've got this, you can see the Stotts that are strung out there. Nice little start, lovely little carp. And let's see if we can work out a nice little feeding pattern. I've got the catty, but, and I spoke about this a lot at this venue, sometimes the catty is everything, but it can also destroy you, destroy your fishing. Now, interesting, I'm using a 6mm in the band with just a tiny little 18 hooks, which is something I like to do. And like I say, I'm just feeding about 10 4mm, dunk them in the water, put them in the pot, and get over there. And that went well, that first fish. Let's see, and I'll try and explain more. Because the slope is going away from me, from right to left, I flick my hook bait out to the left and let it come into as it's shallowing up, if that makes sense. If I was to flick it to the right and let it come in, it'd be on the top of the shallow and it wouldn't ever get down to where I need it to be. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm just gonna rattle those pellets in. It's ever so windy today. Rattle those pellets in, then flick the rig out to the side, and then drag it over the top, just like that. You can hold on to the float, but you don't have to. In the wind like this, you just got to get decent presentation, so I'm quite happy to just let the rig fish a little bit. So I actually bashed it about a bit in the wind there. There we go. That'll come in lovely. Now I've got a 0.3 float on. If it was deeper, I'd have one of these set up, but I'd also have a 0.4 or maybe even a 0.5 dive below set up, because sometimes just lifting and dropping, having a quick setting rig is better. So you can imagine that slope. There we go, that's in the mouth. Perfect. You can imagine that slope, like I say, wearing away from me to my left. And I'm just presenting that bait nicely. Just got white zip on, which is perfect for this sort of stamp of fish. Sort of in the £1.5 to £5 range really. Get an odd bigger one, but of course you can get them out with a puller kit. This is a better one, I think. Interesting, I'm only using 012 hook length, which is probably alarming for a lot of people, but I do a lot of fishing with lighter lines, and as long as you match it with the right elastic, it's fine. See, that's the sort of stamp that we're sort of catching today. £1.5, £2 at times. And I just love that rig, that strung out. I've got that 6-inch hook length, so I've got a bit of leeway. If that rig does go up the shelf a bit too far or whatever, I'm still fishing because I've not got my shot too close to the hook. Just gives me a bit of leeway. And it's just a case of repeating the process until we feel the need to make a change, whether that's get the catapult out. But for now, I'm actually going to feed a few more pellets and try and feed them out, and then, whereas I've just been tapping a few in, there's obviously a lot of fish here. And it's nice to just sometimes sit over a bit of a dumper bait. And something like this, let's just show you. So it's very important to have your marker, especially when you're dealing with slopes like this, and a far bank marker. I know that there's like a dandelion there, thistle thing. That's the perfect spot for me, that. I'll just lower that right on top. The wind was kind there. And it's what the spot you pick to fish is so important. And what I mean by that is, like, you look at that far bank and it all looks great. There's all little bays and little cuttings and stuff. But I know on this venue there's always there's a golden spot within the spot that is always better. And this, I believe, this is the spot, because they're coming in from around that bend and I'm intercepting them as they come around that bend, and the depth's right and the bottom must be just dead right. There must be no rubbish on the bottom, and I think that is why we're catching so nicely. It's great fishing. So they're only little carp at the moment, but there's plenty of them. And when you get bites as quick as this, it's just nice to get a bit of sport. There's no point really changing anything at the moment. I'm just going to move that back shot down. It's just a lovely way to fish, and I think that worked better putting a few more pellets in. Getting just the right number is everything, and it seems so trivial to put in 20 pellets in as opposed to 10, but it really can make a big difference to where the fish are in your peg, whether they're coming up. If you put too few in, they often come right up off the bottom and you're missing your bites. Put too many in, you might not get any bites, or you might wait forever. So just getting that happy medium. Ideal is you get your rig to the bottom and then get a clean bite, and it's playing with the amount of pellets that you feed until you get that in that perfect sort of ratio. Obviously in a perfect world you'd go up into shallower water, but it's not really an option here. Oh. Duck really, yeah. Took my pole out. I'm just going to get the catty out because I can't help myself. Sometimes the catty's better. Indications. I'm not happy with that amount of pellets. I obviously didn't get it right, that truck. I should have caught one by now. Unless obviously there's a bigger fish moved in, but it's such a simple bait, hard pellets, but there's so many like little nuances to it, feeding wise. If you feed too many or not enough. So eventually we caught one, but it felt like an eternity then. And I know it isn't in the grand scheme of things, it's just probably a couple of minutes when I look back at the footage, but it felt like an eternity and I missed a few bites and had to lose feed with a catty, so I believe that means that my feeding wasn't quite right, that chuck. And I'm constantly working on how many I'm feeding. Little ghosty. Little ghosty, popping back. So we put in what I thought was more bait then than we needed to, but the result was a bit not as clean as I'd like, so I'm just going to fish this chuck with a bit more bait. And maybe me, if I can catch putting more in than less, even better. So we've put in half a pot, probably 4 mils. Let's see if that gets them down into where I need them to be. A bit better. I mean, we still caught fish relatively quickly, so it's not the end of the world, but there's obviously a lot of fish feeding, and getting them in that nice zone is what we're looking for. So let's just get that in position. Everything's set now. Now it can really pay off to, that was better. See, that's more me, that is. It can really pay off to experiment with when you feed as well. I think that's a big thing that we want to talk about in this video, because the natural thing is to tap your bait in and then lower your float over the top. It makes total sense. But we all know that when you're fishing with hard pellets, quite often a lot of your bites come as the pellets hit the water. So sometimes getting your float, laying it in, getting it set, and then putting your bait on top can work better. In fact, let's try it. I don't know why it doesn't make any sense, but sometimes, I mean, look at the presentation. The hook holes are amazing. Sometimes it just works better that way. So we'll try that. This chuck will I thought we floated. What's going on here? The float come on. Sometimes actually feeding on your float is better. So let's try that. This chuck. Say we're going to go with an increased amount though. So I think that's clearly the way. Like I say, if I can feed lots of pellets, I'm happy. So let's get this show on the road. So I'm just going to get my rig in position and then feed. So the rig's about settled, is it? Yep. Let's get them pellets over the top of it. And of course, that is the problem. Sometimes doing it that way just increases your liners, which is obviously something you've got to work out. But some days that's the answer. Now, eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed my float started to ride up there, and that's because the wind's pushed my rig up the slope. It hasn't mattered because we've got a bite, but just be mindful of that. If your float starts sitting up, your pellet's gone up too far up the slope, and I like having I could use a 4 mil on the band, and I'd get as many bites. But having a proper Coppen 6 mil on the band is better because it gives me that bit of anchorage and bit of weight that registers on the bristle. So I know if my rig's fishing properly, because my rig should always be about halfway up the bristle, whereas then it had sort of ridden up a little bit in the wind. And we still caught fish, so it's not the end of the world, but just be mindful of that. White zip's so good on this style of fishing. I'm not using a short kit or anything like that. You could do, it'd be great. But I must admit, when I'm fishing for proper carp, not F1s, I do like a long kit, even fish of this size, because although we're catching fish sort of in the 1 to 2 pound bracket at the moment, there is a lot of bigger fish in this lake. And I like having the bit of extra elastic, personally. for carp anyway. That was a nice ghosty. Get out of there. One thing I will talk about is, I get often asked in my videos like why I do that when I'm playing fish, and you'll see a lot of anglers do it. And it all comes back from when we used to fish without puller kits. And sometimes there was a thing said that if you did that, it sort of regained some elastic. I don't know if it ever did, but it was sort of a habit I got into. Nice fish, isn't it? Yeah, and it's just a habit that I've got into that I've never been able to shake. Nice fish. I think it's... whether it regathers the elastic, I don't think it probably does. But it's just a habit that I've got into that I can never just not get away from. Now just you'll notice I'm just putting my stops back in position. Obviously I've got 020 mainline on here, and I love fishing with 020 mainlines, which means I need to use stops really. And the problem is with stops, they obviously move. So just be mindful of that every time you ship out. Just check they're in the position that you want, and then you're good to go. So let's do that again. We're going to feed on top of the float and just see if we can get our rig position in a touch better this time, because although we caught one, I think it could have been better. So let's just whiz over and we'll catch 2 more and that'll do us. I'm itching to get on the mud line. There's a mud line in this swim, one of the rare ones on this lake, and I'm itching to get on that, to be honest. But that's for another video. No indication. So when I can hear you thinking like, when's he going to get the catty out? Well, the longer I can just catch and tick over using the pot, the better, because as soon as I get the catty out, the fish will be up the bank, down the slope, up, and I can't really be happy with where they are. So the longer I can get bites using the pot, the better. And sometimes you have to up the ante and catapult to get bites, but if I can catch potting, then I always will. And it's my constant battle with my inner feeding demons on this venue, because I know now if I fired some pellets over the top, I'd probably get a response. But look, by just waiting, we got a response anyway. So there you have it, a bit of a little hard pellet session. I absolutely love fishing like this. It's like my favourite style. Got a lovely fish to end on by the looks of it. And on these commercials, the hard pellet is hard to beat, especially on these snake lakes now with carp, more so than F1s, but with carp, this sort of venue, that's a nice fish. Just screams out for hard pellets to me, and using this little rig will make all the difference in the world.